Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. Our guest today is Joe McMonagle, and we're glad you're here, Joe. Thanks for coming. And Raimi and Jessica, as always, I'm really happy to see you every week. And I'm going to start today by reading Joe's biography so that y'all know more about it. About him, I mean, not yet. Joe McMonagle is a spirit healer on a threefold mission, helping people reconnect with their innate goodness and develop a closer relationship with the divine and gain healing and insights into their life purpose. His passion as a healer is channeled through storytelling, in which he weaves spiritual lessons. His debut fantasy novel, which is called Shadows and Light, Journeys of a Spirit Healer, reflect his mission, drawing on his diverse experiences as an engineer, priest, therapist, and technical writer. Joe integrates wisdom and insight into his writing, offering readers an opportunity for self-discovery and transformation. His website is called Remember Your Divine You, and on it he also shares monthly blogs delving into the same themes. And so the link for purchasing his book or learning more about his book is below, as well as his Facebook link and his website there also. And a special offer that he gives for viewers of this podcast. If you subscribe to Joe's website by October 31st and purchase an autographed copy of his book, Shadows and Light, you'll get shipping costs waived. And so if you're interested, you can contact Joe through his website there. So there we go. What a great biography. And thank you again, Joe, for joining us. And what a very interesting background you have. Could you tell us more about you, please?
Sure,
And how you
absolutely.
came to do what you do.
Thank you again for having me, inviting me. It's a wonderful opportunity. Yeah, my life has been an interesting, kind of a meandering one. I was always an avid reader. I kind of thought I'd start with that because of the book and how that developed. I just devoured books as a kid. That's continued through my life, even through school. I know a lot of people when they were in school would say, "Oh, I don't have any time to read because I read too many assignments." And for me, it was my life. It saved me because growing up, I felt very different from most other people, even my family, and so I kind of lost myself in the stories that I read. I became a character along with the other characters in the story, and that kind of progressed. I was raised Catholic, so and when I went to college, I lived in a somewhat traditional family, large family, but when I went to college away from home, it was definitely a shock, and had some interesting roommates that I had to contend with that led me to wonder, why do I believe what I believe? What does it mean? So I started investigating, got involved in the local Newman Center for Catholic students, and found myself really exploring what I believed. Why did I believe it? Did I believe it in the first place? And stumbled upon a group called the Catholic Charismatic Renewal, which presented an image of God and the divine very different from what I grew up with. Everybody seemed happy and joyful rather than cowering in fear, concerned they're going to be condemned to hell for, stepping out of line. And that experience really changed how I viewed myself in relationship to the divine. I suddenly felt like I was loved, and it moved me to the point where I wanted other people to experience a different kind of life, not based in fear, and which led me ultimately to the priesthood. I was lucky that I stumbled upon a community that was very progressive, really emphasizing following your spirit wherever it led, and much to the chagrin of my parents, because they wanted me to become a priest for the local diocese that I grew up in, which was very conservative. And And I loved doing the work that I did. I was in the community for 12 years, 6 in the seminary, 6 ordained, worked in parishes. But one of the things that was so critical to me that I felt, again, lucky was that my old religious community offered therapy. And it was so important for them that the guys who were ministering out of the community were balanced, had no hidden demons in their lives, were really good, decent people. So I took advantage of that, and in the process came out as gay, which, believe it or not, they had no problem with. In fact, half of my classmates were gay. Um, um, but I still felt really called to serve and bring a different impression of who we are and who we are related to the universe. So I kept on in the ministry, was ordained, as I mentioned, and but in my second assignment in a parish, my orientation came a calling, so to speak, and I realized that I really needed to look at what I wanted. I knew I wanted to serve, but I also realized I wanted a husband. And ultimately, what I did was I left the priesthood, and 6 months later met my current husband, and I, had to pay the bills. So it's like, okay, where is this going to come from? And I got my bachelor's degree in architectural engineering, and so I was able to stumble upon a CAD software company where I could do technical writing as part of my job. And that was fine. It paid my bills. It enabled me to start putting money towards retirement. But I felt really, really unfulfilled. It was like, this is not what I should be doing. I mean, I know I need to make money. And what I found was kind of interesting. One of my first roles was actually in technical support. And I would have calls. I'd have to handle calls from people who were in a crisis mode about the work they were doing. And it struck me as so different because, I had previously talked with and ministered to people who were truly in life crisis about who they were and their relationship to God and what their purpose was. And here this person was worried about a piece of software that wasn't working the way they wanted it to. But I stuck around, kept on doing that. Actually enrolled in a counseling psychology program to get a master's degree, thinking that being a therapist might be the role to go, where I can be of service. And I continued through that. I also worked full time as well because I just needed the money to pay for everything. And I loved it. The counseling degree was actually had an emphasis in transpersonal identity. So it includes spiritual, included discussions about things like Reiki, for example, and just other ways of looking at the world, connections to nature, recognizing that we're all kind of part of the same thing. We're one. I know you talk about the oneness that we are, Carla, and I felt that resonates so much with me. But when I went to start seeing clients as a trainee, I realized that although I was good at it, I didn't love it. I didn't feel my passion around it. It was just like, this is great. And my classmates, I was envious of them because they were like, this is just what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's like, it's not what I'm supposed to be doing. So I got the degree, but I just kept on working at the software industry. And I said, okay, by that time I had a pretty close connection to divine beings, so to speak, and would talk to them every day and say, okay, guys, what am I supposed to be doing? Should I be looking for another job? And I looked for a job in the nonprofit. Nothing came about as a result of that. And ultimately, message I got was, there's more for you to learn in the software industry, in how you set boundaries and how you relate to different people, and also how you bring your own spirit into the workplace. Not in terms of trying to convert people or talk to them about God or spirit or whatever, unless they asked me, which some did, but more so just presenting who I was as a dedicated person of integrity, that showed up in the world and was always treating people well. And that's nice, but it's like, isn't there something more I should be doing? And ultimately, my divine advisors, as I call them, kind of had a bit of a sense of humor. The way they said it was time for me to start doing my real work as a spirit healer was that I got laid off. And yeah, and it didn't happen in a very nice way, but it happened. And, they asked me to stick around for 7 months after they laid me off to help train the people that were replacing me, which is sad, but definitely not unusual in the software industry and some industries today. So what I did was, by that time we were in COVID. So I took advantage of being able to work my schedule around attending workshops and training, spiritual trainings and such. I still did my work full time and everything. I got everything done. But I began to wonder what I might do to express who I was as a healer in a sense. And a couple years before, I had attended a therapeutic retreat and talked to the founder of it, and she said, Joe, your calling is really as in spiritual healing. And I was like, what? And but when she said it, it completely resonated. It was like, yes, this is what I should do. But then the next question is, well, what the hell does that look like? Pardon my curse. I've never heard of anything like this. And I knew I wasn't one of those healers who would, stand up in front of thousands of people and lay my hands on them and say, evil, wicked spirit, come out, that kind of stuff. That was not me. So I thought, well, what is this going to be? And providentially, I was led to a workshop where a small breakout session we had, a woman there said, I want to convey spirituality in a way that will be receptive or received to young kids, not in this disconnected, otherworldly kind of thing, but really innately and in the human being. I had an aha moment at that moment, because before then I had thought there was a book coming out of me in some way, probably a self-help book about understanding self and purpose and all that kind of thing. And in that aha moment, I realized I could write a fictional novel that presents ideas in a different way, but in the context of something that would be enjoyed as a reading. And I remember in my years reading books and enjoying being characters along with the main characters in the story, and how I would take in the messages that I would hear that would really touch my life personally. And I thought, I can do that. I can do that. And so that's where my book kind of evolved. And writing it was a blast. I mean, I felt guided. I have two muses in particular that helped me write the book, Archangel Gabriel and Luke, St. Luke, who is one of the writers of the gospel. And what was so amazing was as I'm writing it, I'm discovering new ideas. One of the aspects of the book, not to give out too many details, is the main character, Tom, comes upon people who are part of what is called an all is one faith. And that came from all is one. And so in that story, very much new ideas are presented, asking people to just consider if this makes sense to you. And it was just a beautiful experience writing the book. And in the course of writing the first one, discovered it wasn't just going to be one book, it was going to be a series of 5. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of explaining where I am today.
That's a really cool story. I love how you were guided to write the book. That's really neat. I'm gonna have to look into it.
Thank you. Yeah, it was it was a shock. I mean, there were days when I'm literally typing on the computer, and suddenly this idea just comes out of nowhere, and it's like, where the heck did that come from? And so I said, well, let's go with it. And I would start typing it, and the scene would evolve, and then another idea would come, and I would type that in, and then of course the challenge was how to make it flow, and how to, that whole process was definitely a learning experience, because writing a novel is very different from technical writing, and I'm still learning a lot about what that involves anyway. So.
Oh, very cool. I like how so many of the aspects of turning points of your life, it's how you didn't just make the decision with your mind. You were tuned into spirit anyway, and were seeking guidance on that from that level, and so you found your calling. Yeah,
It's
your
very,
wish.
very true. In fact, I contributed a chapter to a collaborative book about how I got where I am today, and it was fun writing even that story about what I called them was signposts of what the signpost, how a particular signpost led me to in a religious community, how it led me to leave the community, and so forth and so on. And it was definitely an interesting. I feel really blessed with my experience, even to the point where I grew up. There was some. So I grew up in an alcoholic family. My father was not in recovery. He has since died. And life was. I mean, sometimes it was chaotic, and so. What I'm able to do now is that what I went through as a child, and there were other traumatic things that I went through that I don't want to mention here, but they made me who I am today. They enabled me to develop a sensitivity and a compassion that actually fuel my service as a healer in some ways. So it's kind of it's great when you can look back and say how a trauma can help you, but when you're in the midst of that trauma, it's definitely awful. And the last thing you want to hear is, "Oh, this is going to be for your good." It's like, no, it's not. So but I'm grateful for where I've been, and I'm grateful for definitely the guidance I've had along the way. So
what form does your healing take place, your spirit healing? You talked about Reiki, but
right.
so just explain more of how you do what you do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have wrestled with it a lot, big time, and even in the last few months. So I have taken like aura certification programs to read auras through Dougal Fraser. I've worked with Denise Lynn in her workshops about connecting to spirit and how to do angel card readings and oracle readings. And I actually do offer what I call life moment readings. And I haven't had any takers since I did that, which is actually okay, because one of the issues, I don't know if you experience that, Carla, if you offer services, is how much do you charge, and do you feel like you're valued? I mean, are you worth what you actually charge?
Right.
I mean, initially I asked for like $30, and a friend who I went through aura training said, Joe, I was charged $150 by one practitioner, and your reading of me was so much better than that was. And it's like, really? She said, well, that's kind of why you're not getting any people, because you don't really believe in your gifts. And so I struggled with that. I also struggled with, if I'm going to help someone remember who they are innately, that they're innately divine, that means building a relationship with a person, and it becomes almost a therapeutic relationship, like I would have had if I had seen clients as a therapist. And a part of me thought, do I really want to develop that kind of relationship with someone? For a year, when I saw clients, I saw most of them for a year, and I realized this is going to sound bad, but I really didn't want that long-term relationship with people. I wanted to help people, but I didn't want to do it in this long-term way. So I kind of stepped back from that a little bit and thought, perhaps the way I can do that is just by offering the hints, the stories in both my blogs, but also in my book, to invite people to consider things differently. I was kind of thinking about this in a way because, right now we have a lot of polarization, and religion plays a big part in that. It's really unfortunate, but I also am aware of people who are very they have a struggle with the idea of God, of a higher power, of a united consciousness, and I think for many people it's because they've been hurt. Religion has been used as a way of controlling them or a vehicle of supporting abuse. And I thought, well, what my book offers, at least right now, is to it's not one that says, okay, you need to attend this workshop and figure out what God is and blah, 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 because someone in that situation wouldn't do that. They wouldn't go to that. But they might pick up a book and see, okay, well, here's a different view on that. And maybe this higher power or universal consciousness is different from what I was afraid of or what was thrown at me as a condemner of my behavior. So to answer your question, I'm still trying to work out what it's going to look like. It's a little frustrating, but honestly, the message that I'm getting right now, well, initially the messages were, the book is the way you do, your series is going to how you're going to do it. And honestly, I think what happened with that was I was putting too much pressure on trying to figure out what to do, how to really do this and do it right, because I'm a perfectionist, workaholic kind of thing, and that kind of messes with my heads a lot. So I think they wanted me, or my guys wanted me, to just back off of that and let this be. But my sense is down the road, when I get a little bit more comfortable with my calling as a spirit healer, the specifics of what that might look like will evolve and be a little bit more concrete. So it feels a little nebulous right now, which I feel like is makes me uncomfortable, but I got to be where I am, and so that's what I'm living with. I don't know if that answered your question very well, but
Sure. Yeah. I think a lot of people kind of evolve into finding what they're really supposed to do, or what that passion is in them. I know that was with me. It just kind of flew at me sometimes, and other times it's a lot of deep searching. And so I don't know. Everybody's unique, but I think we all kind of generally evolve into it. I don't know, but I love your story. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, when I hear people talk about what they enjoy, what their passion is, I just light up. It's like, I love hearing what they love doing. I love hearing how it impacts other people. I mean, I had never heard of the work that you had done, Carla, and it made me wonder, maybe I should include that in my book, in book 3, because I'm working on book 2 right now, to bring in the different modalities and then introduce people to different ways of looking at life and nature. And even recently you had a young man who connects with nature and trees.
Yes,
I forget his name. I did subscribe
Sammy.
to it, but Sammy, exactly. And I love that idea. And I thought, one of my characters in book 2 is really attuned to nature. She has a strong earth sense, as I'm calling it. And I thought, I can bring this in to book 3. In book 3, the main character and 3 of his friends go out around the countryside and other countries to learn from other practitioners and other things to help them, further develop their gifts. What I love so much, what is so cool, as I learn about these new gifts and new abilities, I'm able to introduce them to my readers, and just present a different way of looking at things and different relationship to nature and energy and so forth. And I have a blast as I learn about them and as I write about them. So it's just,
Right.
but like I said, I just love hearing people's passion and finding out about what it's about and what they love about it and how it drives them and just literally how it impacts their life. So I've looked into some of the stuff that you've done, Carla, and as well as Sammy, and have been very intrigued.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, that awesome. Very cool. Yeah, and what I have found anyway in writing my book, it was like kind of like what you just referred to. It was like I had started the book, but it wasn't like I had learned everything I needed to know yet. I mean, I thought I did, right? But it would just not come together. And then it was like this experience, and oh, that's what I needed to know to finish the book, or I mean, it's really cool how that works.
It is. And we kind of discover ultimately that we're always learning regardless. A new idea may open up a whole nother avenue that you haven't even considered. And it in some ways I find it a little not disturbing, but like, oh, I mean, like a shock. It's like, I didn't know that. And then I just find an opening. It opens even more avenues than I had even considered. Because, well, I mean, as I mentioned, I was trained in engineer, so I'm used to, from that, there's set definition and everything is clear and everything has an answer. And in fact, when I started taking theology classes in the seminary, I was faced with a struggle because I kept reading different opinions about the same thing. And my response was, well, who's lying? And it wasn't until later that I realized they're all presenting it from their understanding, their experiences, and what makes sense to them. And I thought that really applies to life and universe and universal consciousness and God. People try to understand things from their perspective, from their experience, and they got to follow what resonates with them, regardless of what other people think. If they think it's kooky or woo-woo or even in some cases sacrilegious or whatever, it doesn't matter. You got to follow what makes sense to you, and that's so freeing because there's not one set for everybody that's identical because we're all different, and that's so great. I mean, for someone who always felt different than most people, it was nice to know that being different was actually a wonderful thing. So,
don't you think that most people feel different, and when you're younger or when you're growing up? I know I did, in different ways. And it was like we all feel separated, right, in some way or the other, instead of really knowing that we're all part of the oneness, right? All
yeah. I do believe that everybody feels different in the same way, but they don't always think that other people feel different. I mean, when I was growing up, I was not yet out, of course, as a gay man or gay boy. I was skinny. I was not athletic. And so with all the other boys, I went to a boys' high school, and I just didn't fit in. I mean, I didn't like sports. And my father's like, well, join the little league, and I wasn't very good at it. I knew I didn't belong, and I ended up dropping out because I was battered by the other players. So I did not fit. I didn't seem to fit with the definition of what a boy should be. And the other thing was I thought a lot. I reflected because I felt different. This is common with a number of people who have different sexual attractions or experiences of their own identity, you start reflecting about, well, why do I feel different than this? And there's a lot of internal work that happens. And so that to me, it didn't look like anybody else had that kind of internal reflection. So I felt like an odd duck. But I now as an adult, I think, yes, absolutely. Everybody feels different. Everybody in some ways might feel like a fraud, even though they're not consciously aware of it. I think some people who are have major egos, or everything is about them. I think inside they're scared little kids who are afraid that people will find out who they truly are. And I know a number of people in leadership positions who are in that place. I think some people would know that. And so, what I do, because well, how can I help these people as a healer? And so far, all I know I can do is offer blessings to all those people, and to offer, and my book has a specific leaning to it from a kid who doesn't fit in from the standard definition of what a boy should be like. But I'm hoping that it will be an avenue for people to say, hey, I'm different, but it's okay. In fact, it's a good thing. So, and how to reach people who feel different, but don't let themselves admit it. That's a big question.
Yeah, yeah, that is. Yeah, and I agree that we don't think while we're growing up we feel different, but we don't think others feel different.
Right,
We think it's
right.
just us.
Yeah. It looks like they all have their act together, and you're the only one that doesn't.
Yeah.
So obviously something's wrong with me, or I would fit in and not have this issue with that everybody else doesn't have. So yeah.
Yeah. It's I guess it just shows that that nature, that feeling of separateness starts so very early. And um, perhaps even like with me, it started in gestation. And I know that happens if there's traumas of any kind
Right.
to the mother or the baby, that can happen then, or at birth, or like for a lot of men, I'm guessing it would also, if it doesn't happen before then, it happens at circumcision, if that's what their parents choose to do.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I find
I
that in the
also think
biofield work anyway.
some of it, honestly, I believe in reincarnation, which obviously is not part of the Catholic Church teaching. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not. But I believe, prior to incarnation, we are all so aware that we are one, that we share the same essence. We share the same essence as a higher power, so to speak, God. So we're all divine. But we choose to be born, and by being incarnated, we break off that connection. We forget ultimately who we are intentionally, so we can have a different experience, maybe bring in new learnings, or maybe, and I also believe this, is that prior to incarnation, we decide what our purpose is for the incarnation. And so once we're born, one of the steps is to try to remember who we are and to try to live out the calling or purpose that we have. So initially we automatically were separated, and even the act of birth is a separation. And so that keeps, we're separate. And part of the goal is to realize we're not separate, we're the same. Some people remember that, some people don't, and the don't, is unfortunate. But I keep telling myself every path is each person's path, and so my mother is still a Catholic, very traditional, and she knows that I'm not a Catholic anymore, which really hits her hard. And it's like, Mom, I understand where you're from. The Catholic faith played a very important part in my life. Many of its tenets I still hold dear. but I'm not that way anymore. And you'll have to let people discover what makes sense to them. And I think I went on a tangent. Sorry about that.
No, it was all good. Yeah. There was a thought I had, but it just kind of went out the window. But I was listening to you, and these thoughts were swirling in my head, and so now it just went out.
I understand.
Well, I have a question. So I loved how, because I think it resonated with me, how you were talking about when you were in the engineering job, little change of subject, but when you were in that position and you were trying to, find something else or get out, but you were told that you were supposed to be there. There were more learnings for you. I feel like I'm in that same place. And I'm just wondering a couple of things. Do you feel like you found what those learnings or the reason for you staying there longer are? And have you used that concept in your books?
That's good. Interesting. I did not use the concept in the book. I should have. It could be, I could add it later, I think. But yes, it was really a struggle to figure out what it was. And I laid this on my old boss, learning, because I was for the last 15 years of my work at the job, I was a technical writer manager. So I managed people. But interestingly enough, I didn't like managing people a lot. And my boss knew that. So he assigned me less employees to manage. But as a result of that, he kept throwing project after project after project in my way to handle. And so at one point I felt really overwhelmed. And the way he was presenting each project was that it was actually a priority. And it's like, well, if I have 20 priorities, how do I manage 20 priorities? So one day I sat down with him in my meeting and I said, I'm not sure what to do. I have too much going on. You asked me to do these things. I'm happy to do that. How do I prioritize? He turned around and blamed it on me. He said, you didn't do things. You're not prioritizing correctly. You're doing this wrong. You're not managing your time. And I thought, how dare you? I thought perhaps part of it was my issue, and I would fully admit it. But he was the one that assigned these things to me, and he was the one that kept demanding that this has to be done. So I left there realizing, okay, where I was putting in 50, 60-hour work weeks, I told him from that point on, I'm not putting in any more than 40 hours. And that's it. And whatever gets done, and things might take a little bit longer. Part of me was expecting him to say, well, so long, sucker, you're out of here. He didn't. And so what it taught me and what I had to learn was really setting boundaries, really recognizing that I didn't have to kill myself to consider that I was doing my job. And it really challenged my workaholism that I had actually worked on for years, for a while, but it basically said, you got to take care of yourself. You know what's right. Follow your intuition, and be able to say no when something would not be of service to what you're doing or would impact other work that you're doing. I don't know if that's impacting. I mean, if you have that circumstance in your job as a traveling nurse, Jessica, but being able to say no. And the hardest part, I think, someone in the helping profession is there are so many people who need help. And the last thing you want to do is not help them. But the problem is, if you overextend yourself, you're not going to be able to help anybody else. So, that's kind of what the turning point was. It took a few more years before to learn that, before finally I got laid off. And it's like, okay, now it's time for you to move forward with being a spirit healer. But that was, I think, the turning point for me.
Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. Yeah.
I was looking over your website a little earlier this morning, and what drives me is the spiritual part of life, and talking about it, and that's my passion. And I love that shows in your website. There were so many things in your blogs, and I guess they would be all considered blogs. I don't know. There was different tabs, and I was clicking on
Right,
different
right.
ones, and there was so many, such a multitude where you were relaying how the spiritual affects us in the daily, and I was wondering two things, whichever way you'd like to go, if you could share more about the divine humor that you notice, and
Oh yeah.
also perhaps how you um, perceive or how you experience the support and signs that you receive from your guides.
Sure. Divine humor is really interesting. I always thought spirituality was really serious business. You know, I mean, it was always conveyed that way. You know, don't step out of line, you're going to hell. And as a Catholic, we had to go to confession, and I stressed out, well, what do I say in confession? I talked back to my parents, I hit my sister, that kind of thing. But of, if you don't do it right, you're going to hell. And as a Catholic, I was taught that if you die with a mortal sin on your soul, you would go to hell. So it was always serious and always fear-based. So when I had a changed experience of God and loving and caring, and realized I wanted to share this with people, I still considered it serious business. So humor had no place. It was like, no, this is really serious. You got to get this thing right. So you got to buckle down and work hard and push yourself. Again, the workaholic stuff came into play big time. And it was as I developed closer relationships with my divine advisors, who I created, and I learned about that actually. Kyle Gray, I don't know, he teaches about angels. He connects with angels all the time. As part of the workshop, he suggested creating a board of directors who would guide you. Well, board of directors coming out of the corporate world just did not work for me. It's like, sorry, I can't handle work anymore like that. But I sought out, and he taught about the various archangels, and so I sought out connecting to these other beings, in the course of which discovered one of those beings is my father, who has passed on 10 years ago. But they're the ones that, how do I say it? They started the humor. They started communicating to me that it's not all seriousness. And the way they did that is a little, well, they have an odd sense of humor. So when I started meditating every day, I started feeling a real connection to them because I would feel tingles. And I later discovered I was ultimately just raising my vibration to connect with, the higher energy, so to speak. Well, this tingles didn't stop at meditation. And one day I had to take care of, how do I say this, personal business in the bathroom. And I felt tingles, and I was like, what the heck are you doing? How can you be, this is, are you really doing this right now while I'm taking care of this business? And they're like, Joe, we're with you at every single moment. There's none excluded. So that includes taking care of business. And I thought, oh my God, that is just so hilarious. How could you, I mean, it's like, it really literally blew my mind. And then I've had multiple moments. The most recent one happened when I was close to publishing my book, and I was working with the publishers, and they sent me an email, saying it was good, and this is self-publishing publisher, not a traditional publisher. Anyway, in the email, they talked to me about promoting my book and marketing, which freaked the hell out of me. I mean, growing up in a difficult situation as a kid, the way I survived was to hide, not to put your neck out, not to step out. You didn't get attention, which, is kind of strange when you think of, I was a priest, so I got attention that way. I was a manager, so I got attention that way. So I really struggled with that. And one of the ways that my divine advisors communicate to me, I believe that they communicate to you in ways that make sense to you, specific to you. Well, as a gay man, I kind of fall into the typical gay man. I love musicals. And I've gotten a lot of messages through musicals from them. Well, in this case, it was from the musical Newsies, which I loved when it was a movie. And there's a line about, in one of the songs, about courage cannot erase your fear. Courage is when you face your fear. And the song, this is also part of their humor. I would wake up in the middle of the night and the song would be in my head. And it's like, really, guys, I do need to get a little sleep. Well, one day my husband and I were heading into the city. I live in Oakland, across the bay from San Francisco. And I'm sitting there, and the message I got was, why don't you get up, hang from the bars, the grab bars, and sing the song from Newsies. And I was like, what the heck? I'm like, there's no way I'm going to do this. There's no way I'm going to do that. I don't like buskers when they show up on the train anyway, because they typically want money from you, and it's usually music I don't particularly like. So the last thing I was going to do was that. So their humor, they regularly remind me it's not a serious business. They regularly remind me that I have to enjoy my life, that it's not always about doing the spiritual healing work. I have to be able to appreciate moments, be silly, have fun. That's such a part of this life experience as the spiritual. It's got to be a balanced thing. Otherwise, why would you become human in the first place? So that's where the humor came. And then as far as messages, I think one of the things is all of us are getting messages from advisors and divine and universe all the time. We may not always recognize them. Ironically, I've contributed a chapter to another collaborative book that's coming out at the end of this month called Guided by Spirit. And in that book, I write about how people might receive messages and how the universe communicates to you in different ways that make sense. And the gist of it again was they communicate in ways that make sense to you. So musicals for me, my dad actually communicates to me by leaving tails up pennies all over the place. And it's really sweet. And a number of other ways. So my belief is that they're communicating with people, supporting people all the time. Everybody has guardian angels, and people might not be aware of them. And the question is, are there synchronicities that are happening that you're not aware? Are there coincidences that are happening that really have a divine origin that are pointing you to this or that? And it's really, I'm dating myself by using this term, but it's really cool. I just love that they constantly do that. But interestingly enough, I still struggle with believing it. I still get scared. I had to have a chat with my inner teenager yesterday, because he was freaking out about this gathering, having this talk, because he was worried, am I planning enough? I should really write down a script so I know exactly what I'm going to say, because if I don't, I'm going to get it wrong. And if I got to get it wrong, they're going to hate me and they're going to want to throw the YouTube video away. So I really had to sit down with him and said, it's okay. I understand what you're feeling. I'm not going to make you not feel that way, but it will be okay, because remember all these examples of your divine advisors being with you, guiding you and supporting you. It'll be okay. So, and it's been great. So, did I answer your question? And this is
Sure.
this is also the teenager saying, did you really answer? You probably didn't answer a question.
It's good. It's good. I think the one big thing that I appreciate with podcast guests is when they keep talking. It's when there's a big lull that I'm scrambling to try to think, well, now what should I have next? And it really helps me, or puts me at ease and flow when the guest keeps talking about what they're passionate about. Yeah.
I actually worry about that too. My teenager self said, what if there's blank time? And I know I was interviewed by my publisher some months back, and they asked me to provide some questions. And ironically, I answered all 3 questions by the first question. And suddenly there was like, what else do we talk about? So so I invited my husband, and it's like, Michael, come in. Anyway, it was, so I understand. I think it takes great courage and bravery to offer these kind of things. And I wish I would be at that place at some point, but I'm definitely not there yet. So thank you for taking a risk and doing this kind of thing, Carla.
Oh, well, you're welcome. In fact, it wasn't my idea. It was my husband's idea. And it's like, you should do this. And I thought about it. And at first it was like, no, I don't want to have, I'm not good at speaking with people, right? That's my reaction. It's like, I like one-on-one really good, or really small groups. And to be online and to watch myself talk or hear myself talk, it's like, I'm not the smoothest, eloquent talker. I don't put things together really in big, smooth, long sentences. It's kind of choppy, and then I think more, and then I have another thought. But I thought, it was like, yeah, I do need to do that for whatever reason. And for me, I think it was for learning for me, so that I can become okay with me in how we do things, and to become so that I do become easier to talk, or to talk about things.
I understand. Yeah. It's a process, and it took great risk, obviously. And I believe your husband was a channel of the message to you to say, give this next step a try, and see what happens. And I have also gotten that through my life as well.
Yeah, my husband's like that for a lot of big things in my life. It's like, it's things that I don't even think of or hadn't ever thought of. And it's like, this is what you need, or this is good. And it's like, well, yeah, why didn't I see that? And it's like, yeah, he comes up with these big things. They might be little, but the big ideas that I never think about are usually his.
I understand that. You got muses in different places. My husband operates that way too. The vacation I went, we were on a cruise for a part of the time, and he's like, "We'll give out your bookmarks," because I made bookmarks that have an image of the front of the cover of my book. I don't know if you can see it. That's just part of it.
Put it closer to your camera. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll here's the actual book.
Okay.
So I took a clip of it down the center and turned it into a bookmark, because people were saying, I'm thinking, well, how do I give out, a business card and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, people don't use business cards these days. I thought, but if they read a hard copy book, they could use a bookmark. So he suggested, bring your bookmarks. We can give them out. I was like, what do you mean give them out? How are we going to give them out? We're going to say, here, want a bookmark? And in some cases, Michael found a way in the conversation to bring up the fact that I was an author, and then he would pull out the bookmark and give it to them, and I would be like, "Oh my God!" So sometimes it is helpful to have someone who's a little bit more, who well, for me, doesn't get caught in my own fear of risking. So it sounds like your husband has become a vehicle of that for you.
Oh, definitely. Yes,
That's cool.
definitely. Yeah, it is. Joe, we have just a few minutes left. Is there anything else about your books or one question I had, it was on your offer to viewers. So I know you gave the Amazon site, but you're also selling books from, because it was an autographed copy, selling it from your home.
I purchased 30 copies of the book, and if people want an autographed version, they can order it from me through, they just need to contact me, and I can autograph the book, and I can even include a bookmark if they want that. And I just had the same thing. I was going to say something, and it went right out it's like, all right, guys, hey, can you bring it back? Although my philosophy is if it was important enough, it'll come back. But what it was perhaps give a taste of what the book is about.
I'd like to, yeah. If you would like to read something or whatever.
So I could. But the book is about it's a journey of a boy who has unique healing gifts, both physical healing gifts, but also gifts around spirit. But that for much of the book, I shouldn't give this away. But anyway, he goes through a journey of self-discovery. He's always felt different. In many ways, some of his story is mine. So I definitely throw in little pieces of things I experienced going along the way, growing up, which I kind of love to do. I'm giving myself visibility. I'm putting myself out there. In the course of his journey, he faces, because it's a fantasy, he has to face bad people, and he has challenges. And in the process, he's called to look at God and faith and what this is all about. He's threatened by a figure. He has to escape to another land where he meets people who are different than he is and have different faiths. And so it's a real transformational experience. The honor is I had only intended to write one book, but I had so many little vignettes I had created that there was no way it was going to be one book, because it would have been 3,000 pages. So that's why it's a series. But I can certainly read a few pages from the chapter 1 if you'd like. It's up to you guys.
Maybe just a longer paragraph or something.
A longer paragraph, okay.
Or if you had something in mind.
Yeah. I should have thought about that sooner. This is in the first chapter, and it's actually a situation with his sister, which I kind of find kind of amusing. Tom's sister Melly is a little older than him, and she's pretty smart on her own. And an elder comes to their home pretty angry because Melly wasn't really doing things the way he wanted them. So the elder asked about your behavior yesterday, his mother stated. Did you talk back to him after he asked you to be silent? Yes, ma'am, she gulped. Melly's light brown hair looked to be a bit tangled, and her button nose had something on it. You know better. Apologize, his mother demanded. Sorry, elder, Melly replied. But what about her assignment, the elder demanded, his fist clenched. What did you write, Melly? His mother asked calmly. Well, Melly paused. My exact words were, the requirement to attend chapel every Sunday is antithetical to the belief that dew is omnipresent. At the end of my essay, I asserted that we can worship him equally well at home, in nature, and even in the privy, she added with an impish grin.
Yeah, yeah, and the elder didn't like it.
He didn't like that she was referring to poop. Pardon the expression. But later on, Tom's like, I can't believe she said that. So, so that was one of the reasons why it was such a fun experience to write, because I let myself, write whatever I wanted. So.
Oh, very nice, very nice. Very good. So, why don't we end there for today? And Joe, thank you so much. It's been a very enjoyable conversation.
Well, thank
I think
you.
we've
Thank
all
you.
gained from it. And thank you all for watching. We'll catch you next week. Oh, and here, wait, I forget. I always forget this. There, oops. Like and subscribe, please, to help us
Brilliant.
grow. And bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.